Do you believe it's possible to disappear without leaving a single trace? No footage, no sound, not a single explanation. What you're about to see is one of the most disturbing cases ever to unfold in plain sight of modern society. And by the end, you'll never look at the city the same way again. So before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and that the bell is turned on, because every story we tell here hides something no one dares to speak of. Jade Moreno was the kind of person who left a lasting impression wherever she went. Smart, funny, and driven, she worked as a marketing assistant at a startup in downtown Manhattan. On the night of June 17, 2011, she joined her co-workers for a happy hour to celebrate the completion of a major project. The conversations flowed, the toasts kept coming, and Jade seemed to be in a great moment in life. Around 11 p.m., she hugged everyone goodbye, saying she had to leave. Her sister was waiting for her at home in Brooklyn. It was a normal Friday night, one of those typical New York evenings where no one ever suspects the worst. But that would be the last time Jade was ever seen. She walked down into the Times Square 42nd Street station, one of the busiest in the entire subway system. Surveillance cameras captured her calmly, walking along the platform, phone in hand, earbud in place. Her outfit was simple but distinctive. Denim jacket, black backpack, white sneakers, and a red skirt. The station was crowded, as usual, and Jade waited about 2 minutes before boarding the Q train, also caught on camera. But the car she entered was one of the few without internal monitoring, a detail that would later become a crucial piece of the unfolding mystery. After that frozen moment on a security video, Jade vanished. Jade's sister, Mariana, began to worry about an hour later, when her messages stopped delivering. At first, she assumed Jade's phone had died or lost signal in the subway tunnels. But by 2 a.m., with no response and no sign of her, Mariana began calling all of Jade's friends, then local hospitals, and finally went to the police to file a missing person report. The NYPD, used to hundreds of temporary disappearances each week, initially treated the case with cold detachment. She probably stayed at a friend's place or just needed time alone, they said. But Mariana knew her sister's routines. Jade wouldn't just vanish, and she would never go silent without a word. The anxiety began to spread, like a cold shadow creeping into everyone's chest. The next morning, as news spread among family and co-workers, the real search began. Mariana printed flyers with Jade's photo and posted them throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn. She shared posts on social media and managed to obtain the last cell signal record from the phone company, which showed that the device had been turned off somewhere between the Manhattan Bridge and the Dumbo neighborhood in Brooklyn. But the GPS was vague. There was no evidence Jade had even left the train. The first 24 hours turned into 48, then into a week. No cameras ever captured Jade after that initial entry. No taxi drivers, rideshare drivers, or street guards recognized her. It was as if the most populated city in the United States had swallowed someone on her way home, without witnesses, without noise, without a single trace. And that was just the beginning. Authorities began reviewing every camera along the route Jade should have taken. The Q line connects Manhattan to Brooklyn, passing through several stations equipped with surveillance. What stood out was that Jade did not appear on any footage after entering at Times Square. There was no image of her exiting the train, nor even walking through the following stations. Her Metro card showed no further activity. That immediately raised a chilling question. Did she ever even make it to Brooklyn? Investigators began to suspect that something serious might have happened inside the train itself, but the total lack of recordings made it nearly impossible to reconstruct her steps. A city that prides itself on being one of the most surveilled in the world failed to provide even the most basic answers. Another critical detail emerged when MTA technicians confirmed that the train car Jade had entered had an internal camera that wasn't working that night. Not an unusual occurrence, but in this case, it proved crucial. Since the train traveled through long, dark underground tunnels, it would have been nearly impossible for passengers to notice any suspicious movement, especially that late at night. Riders who had been in the same car couldn't provide anything useful. Some claimed they saw a girl matching Jade's description, but nothing definitive. Others didn't remember seeing anyone or anything at all, something common in a city where anonymity has become the norm. Jade's phone was shut off at approximately 11:52 p.m., nearly 30 minutes after her last message. That meant she still had the phone with her for part of the journey and may have tried to make a call or search for signal. Investigators searched the area where the last tower ping was recorded, but found nothing. No phone, no backpack, no clothing, no signs of a fall, struggle, or escape. It was as if she had been erased both physically and digitally from real time. What disturbed everyone most was that every possible explanation, escape, accident, attack, voluntary disappearance, felt equally improbable, simply because there was no evidence to support any of them. The lack of footage, witnesses, or tangible clues led detectives to begin exploring darker possibilities. Could Jade have been approached while still on the train? Was she unknowingly caught up in something bigger, perhaps an active crime or illegal operation? A camera located at a blind spot in the tunnel might have captured something, but it too was out of order that night due to scheduled maintenance. The string of technical failures and gaps in her projected route caused many to question, was this just coincidence or was something deeper at play? With every attempt to find answers, new questions emerged, and Jade had now officially become a trailless mystery. As the days went by with no updates, the city began to react. Jade's story gained momentum after a newspaper published a headline in the first week of her disappearance. How can someone vanish in the NYC subway and no one notices? The article spread like wildfire, reigniting public debate about safety, camera failures, and the fragility of the system. Demonstrations began to form in key areas of the city. Union Square, the Brooklyn Bridge, Grand Central, where people held signs reading, "We want Jade back," and "She's not just another case." Strangers who had never met her felt deeply moved by her story. Suddenly, it felt like anyone could be Jade. And that fear sparked spontaneous growing mobilization. Mariana, her sister, became the face of the search for answers. She gave emotional interviews, led candlelight vigils, and walked through entire neighborhoods, hanging posters and speaking with residents, shopkeepers, sanitation workers, delivery drivers, anyone who might have seen something. Over time, her voice gained strength, but the emotional toll was heavy. The lack of solid progress began to affect her mental health. "It's like screaming inside a tunnel that doesn't echo back," she said during a local TV interview. Many admired her bravery, but some also feared the tragic end the story seemed to be heading toward. Mariana's pain was broadcast daily, raw, visible, while her sister's whereabouts remained swallowed in complete silence. On social media, the case went viral with the hashtag #YesWhereIsJade, gaining traction among celebrities, politicians, and activists. Several street artists began painting murals of Jade's face, portraying her as a symbol of a city forgotten within the city. One striking mural in the Lower East Side depicted Jade in subway shadows, her eyes covered with a blindfold that read, "Watched but invisible." The artwork became the face of a campaign calling for improved public transit safety, but also of the helplessness felt in the face of the unexplained. Jade's image now appeared on murals, t-shirts, and memes, but her real presence remained an unsettling void, a space no one could fill. And even with all the growing attention, the investigation remained stalled. The police insisted they were exploring all possibilities, but avoided in-depth interviews and never provided the press with anything concrete. Rumors began to spread. False leads, anonymous calls. Some claimed to have seen her walking through the Bronx in a confused state. Others swore they recognized her in homeless shelters or entering unknown buildings in Chinatown, but nothing was ever confirmed. With each failed lead, the feeling deepened that Jade had become just another name on a missing persons wall, a case number in a city so full of stories that often lacks conclusions, only forgettings. As time went on and official silence dragged, new theories began to surface, some sounding extreme at first, but in the absence of answers, even the wildest ideas gained traction. Some believed Jade had been the target of a premeditated crime aboard the subway, possibly caught up unknowingly in a human trafficking route. Others suggested an exploitation network operating in the city's abandoned tunnels and hidden chambers, far from the eyes of the public and law enforcement. An anonymous interview with a former MTA employee added fuel to the fire when he claimed there were ghost routes and maintenance corridors where anyone could disappear without a trace. His statement sparked public outrage and collective fear. Independent investigators, driven by a sense of justice and the glaring gaps in the case, began organizing online forums to dissect subway maps in detail. Stations with inactive cameras were catalogued, suspicious time frames were cross-referenced with odd train movements, and old witness statements resurfaced. One group theorized that Jade could have been confronted inside the train car and taken through an emergency exit normally off-limits to the public, something not impossible given the complex, shadow-filled structure of the subway system. But like everything else so far, that theory lacked evidence. Just another loose piece in a puzzle where no image ever seemed to fit. The most controversial theory, however, came from an unlikely source. A retired train operator who claimed to have witnessed people vanishing in the tunnels over the years, though he had never been taken seriously. According to him, entire sections of the subway had been deactivated and abandoned since the 1970s, now used for activities beyond public understanding. When asked about Jade, he stated flatly that her case wasn't the first, and it won't be the last. Many dismissed his account as delusion, but a portion of the internet embraced the story with fervor, turning the idea into viral videos, amateur documentaries, and sprawling conspiracy theories. Suddenly, Jade wasn't just a missing person. She had become the face of something far darker, something unspeakable. Meanwhile, the family tried to stay grounded in facts. Mariana, caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty, pleaded with the public to stop romanticizing her sister's case as some kind of urban legend. "She's not a myth, she's real, and she's out there somewhere," she said during a vigil on the second anniversary of Jade's disappearance. But the contrast between human desperation and the conspiracy-fueled frenzy was inevitable. Jade's case had outgrown traditional news coverage. It became a riddle that disturbed precisely because it offered no closure, a disappearance that even time couldn't erase. And in New York, where millions commute every day, the idea that someone could simply vanish between work and home became a quiet fear shared by all. In 2019, 8 years after Jade Moreno vanished, an anonymous phone call shifted the direction of the investigation, at least temporarily. A young woman was found in a confused and disoriented state at a psychiatric clinic in Newark, New Jersey. She was dirty, had no ID or belongings, and couldn't say her name. But the nurse who treated her noticed something strange, a small swallow tattoo on her left wrist, the same symbol Jade had, widely publicized during the early search campaigns. The physical resemblance, despite the years, was striking. The clinic contacted police immediately, and within hours, Jade's family was informed. Mariana rushed to the clinic, her heart racing. When she saw the woman for the first time, her instincts wavered between certainty and doubt. There was something familiar in the woman's eyes, her posture. Maybe it was Jade. Maybe not. Time, trauma, and altered features made it hard to tell. Police collected DNA samples, and the clinic kept the woman under observation. News outlets exploded with headlines. "Could Jade Moreno be alive?" went viral. People on social media expressed hope for a happy ending after so many years. For the first time in nearly a decade, hope seemed louder than silence. But that hope didn't last. Just days later, before DNA results could be finalized, the woman vanished from the clinic. She walked out during a shift change, completely unnoticed. The only camera that might have recorded her exit, ironically, was once again out of order. Police launched a new search, now for the woman who might have been Jade, or maybe wasn't. The DNA results, which came 2 weeks later, were inconclusive. The samples were degraded. There were signs of a genetic match, but not enough to confirm an identity. With the woman gone and no further evidence to pursue, the case returned to square one. Only now, more baffling than ever. The twist shattered Mariana. "It felt like losing my sister all over again," she said in an interview. The media, which had initially treated the episode as the potential resolution to a national mystery, now speculated whether the whole thing had been a hoax. Some suggested the woman had been used as a distraction by those trying to erase real clues. Others believed she truly was Jade, but was being watched, manipulated, or protected by something far bigger. Instead of bringing closure, the incident made everything more disturbing. Jade Moreno wasn't just missing. She now seemed to slip through reality, even when people believed they had found her. Today, more than a decade later, Jade Moreno's case remains unsolved. Her absence has become part of the city's background noise, ever present, yet ignored by most. But for her family, time hasn't healed anything. It has only deepened the pain. Mariana still keeps her sister's bedroom exactly as it was, every item in place, as if Jade could walk through the door at any moment and pick up where she left off. She created a foundation in Jade's name, dedicated to helping locate people who go missing in urban spaces, especially within public transportation systems. "If I couldn't find Jade," she often says, "maybe I can help prevent others from vanishing like she did." Yet even she seems to doubt whether the lack of answers is really just coincidence. Jade's name is now mentioned in documentaries, podcasts, and academic discussions about safety failures in major cities. Experts reference her case when talking about vulnerabilities in the New York subway, technical negligence, and the invisibility of victims who can't generate proof of their own suffering. Posters of her face still cling to utility poles in Brooklyn and fade on murals in Manhattan like silent screams against being forgotten. Many young New Yorkers grew up knowing her story, not because they were related to her, but because it became a warning. Jade's face became a symbol of the impossible, disappearing in the most watched place on earth and never being found. There are still people who believe she's alive somewhere. Some say she was taken by a shadowy group operating deep beneath the city. Others think she lost her memory and is living a completely different life, unaware of who she truly is. But the most haunting theory for many is the third, that Jade never left the city, that she's still here, moving among the millions who flood subway stations and crowded sidewalks every day, invisible, ignored, silenced. Her disappearance left a wound in the city, a scar that runs through iron tracks, echoes through tunnels, and hides beneath the everyday noise that so often drowns out screams no one is willing to hear. For the more skeptical, it was nothing more than an accident. Maybe she fell onto the tracks, or maybe she suffered a mental breakdown and ran away on her own. But even those explanations fall apart under scrutiny, because nothing was found. Nothing made sense. Jade Moreno's story doesn't end. It lingers, suspended in time, like an unanswered question hanging over New York City. And while the case remains officially closed, Mariana insists, as long as there's no body, there's still hope. And that hope, no matter how unlikely it may seem, echoes as a warning to all of us. Sometimes the real horror isn't in what happens, but in what we can never understand. Now that you've heard this story, stop and think. How many people disappear every day and are forgotten as if they never existed? Jade Moreno may be just one name, but she represents thousands of silenced voices. Your attention could be the difference between memory and oblivion. If this story moved you, subscribe now to the channel and make sure the notification bell is turned on, because every new video we share here brings truths that many would rather ignore. And maybe the next story starts right next to you.